Blessed be the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. To God be the glory, who has given us a chance again to meet and share together His word today. And it's always an honor and joy for me to have this short time with you. And thank you all for those of you who are watching in many places, in Russian speaking and English speaking. And even after these messages are normally taken into our archives, you can always watch them even in the Oáza.tv archives and also in CNL archives. So it's a joy to again today have this brief moment with you to share heart to heart with you from God's word. This is not a show. This is a raw kingdom business. This is not a religious show. This is not some kind of church show or church activity. This is heart to heart. This is raw as it can be. And we are living in a time that we need to get back to what is more important. Our God is a real God. The devil is a real devil. Problems are real. Troubles are real. And we should stop really playing games and get down to the real issues that confront us every day. And forget about religious games and dramas behind and shows and all that kind of things and get to the real issues of the Christian life and see how we can make the best and be the best we can in Christ Jesus and try to know really what is open to us, what is available to us in Christ Jesus. Father, we just thank you again for today. We bless for this hour and time. And Lord, I humbly ask you, Lord God, to anoint me and anoint the listeners, oh Father, and bless us all. I bring to nothing the powers of the enemy. And I cover this program with the blood of Jesus Christ. Hallelujah. Praise be to God. Now, and in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, is what is written there in chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. And I want to read that for us before we go to the book of Exodus. And chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. And verse 11 says these words. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. They overcame him. Talking here about the saints of God, the believers, overcoming the enemy, overcoming the onslaught of Satan. In fact, in verse 7, it says, there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him to this earth where we live today. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him, you and I, the saints, the believers, overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. We overcome the enemy. We overcome not just the person devil, but all his works and onslaughts, all his tricks and maneuvers. So the blood of the Lamb, which is the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ, is our tool to overcome Satan. So you and I really need to take time to dig deep into the power that is invested in the blood of Jesus, the blood of the Lamb. In this end time, as the battle is raging on all sides, everywhere in the world, in the spiritual, in the physical, in the mental, in the economical, in the political, and nations are at war, troubles are everywhere. We need to know what is available to us. The Bible said that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through God. Our weapons, God have equipped us, given us all we need to be really ready, to be fully equipped and ready for whatever may come our way. And one of the most principal weapon of our warfare and power is the power of the blood of Jesus. And you and I need to take hold of this. In fact, the Bible says that our eyes should be opened to know the exceeding greatness of the power of God that is available to us today. So you and I as believers, and even if you are not even a believer, you can come under the mighty covering of the blood of Christ today by giving your life to Jesus Christ and submitting yourself to the power of the blood of Jesus Christ. Nothing protects us. Nothing defends us and preserves us like the blood of Jesus. In the book of Exodus, and early in their walk, they could understand the power that is in the blood. Chapter 12 of the book of Exodus. Verse 1 says, And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb. A lamb. According to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the house will be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it on according to the number of the souls. Every man, according to his eating, shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish. You know, Jesus, our Savior, was without blemish. He was never with no sin. He was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. He was perfect Lamb of God, and without blemish. A male of the first year, you shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. The whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door post of the house, wherein they shall eat it. This side of the doorpost, this side of the doorpost, and on the top side of the doorpost. You don't put it on the down. You don't trample the blood of the lamb. Okay? And then we go ahead again. You see in verse 12, it says, For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. Verse 13 says, And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. What a blessing, what a promise. So the blood of the lamb sprinkled on the doorposts will protect everyone that is in that very house from the plague and from the judgment, from the pestilence. And the Bible says in John chapter 1 verse 29, this is the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. John was speaking of the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the Lamb of God. All that we are doing here in the Old Testament was just a shadow of what became real in Christ Jesus. He is the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. And he came to give his blood a ransom for you and I. The blood of Jesus Christ ransoms us, delivers us, redeems us from evil. So here was the Israelites, the last night they were to spend in Egypt. They were to take this lamb, sprinkle the blood, and stay indoor. You don't come out. And here Moses was addressing the elders of Israel. Verse 21, Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. Well, you know, and I know that Jesus, our Savior, is our Passover lamb. The Bible says our Passover lamb is what? Is slain. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he see the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door. That's why it is called the Passover lamb. And will not suffer the destroyer to come in unto your houses to smite you. Wow, what a blessing. So anywhere the blood was sprinkled on the doorpost, as long as you stay in the house, within the house, not come out. If you come out at your own risk. If you come out of the covering of the blood, you are exposing yourself to the destroyer, to the angel of death, to the pestilence, and to judgment. So stay within the door. As long as you are inside that door with the blood on the doorposts, you are safe and secure. No destroyer, no pestilence, no viruses will come near you. No judgment, no angel of death will touch you as long as you are under the cover. You are inside the room where the blood is sprinkled. And this is very important in the hour that we are living in. The Bible said that if you break the hedge, the serpent shall sting you. If you come outside that covering, that protection, that hedge of protection. As you know, Satan could not hurt Job as long as he had this mighty hedge of divine protection. And the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ is our hedge of protection today in the New Testament against invisible, ferocious, demonic enemies. None of them can cross the blood of the Lamb. It must be 1998. I was about to go to one of the cities where we have church here in Czech Republic to preach. It was Wednesday night. I was to go to one of the cities. And I was eating in a restaurant here in Prague, preparing to go. That evening I was to go to the meeting there. And as I was eating, I heard a voice say to me clearly, if you go out tonight, I will kill you. And that was Satan speaking to me while I was eating. I was eating in a Chinese restaurant then. Chinese was just coming in new in 1998 to Prague. So it was a very rare meal to have. So I thought that guy might be very hungry or might be jealous of my food. I was enjoying a very nice Chinese food. And he just spoke to me and said, if you go out tonight, I'll kill you. And I didn't even pray. I didn't even talk to him. And I just felt that he might be hungry of the food. He must be too hungry or too jealous of the food I was enjoying. And that evening I left with my translator and the driver, heading to the city called Loni. And along the way, somebody just left the line and just come and hit our car. And our car turned upside down. But my heart didn't even beat fast. I was not even worried at all. I came out of the car. That car was upside down. None of us was hurt. So I came out, opened the door for my translator, opened the door for the driver, and then the police arrived, and they were surprised that none of us was even scratched. And they were asking me, who are you? What kind of man are you? I said, well, I am a preacher of Jesus Christ. And they were surprised that none of us was hurt. And then the guy that hit us with his girlfriend in the car ran away thinking we were all dead. But as he finally said, he said, as I was running away thinking you were all dead, a voice spoke to me and said to me, go back and see what happened. So somehow he turned around and came back and saw us. We didn't even have our heart beating fast, not at all. And he was surprised, and none of us even had any scratch. And he said to me, what kind of man are you? I said, well, I'm a preacher of Jesus Christ. And anyway, when I get back home, I was really very angry with that very devil, that very demon. And I didn't want to just go binding him and trying to, pray. So I took time to ask the Lord, Lord, how do I deal with this spirit that tried to hurt me? How do I deal with him? Should I kill him with a hammer or what? I was still a single missionary, so I was very wild and angry, So, I said, Lord, how do I punish this very spirit? And I was very surprised when the Lord said to me. I thought he would tell me how to really, finish him, wipe him out or send him to the lake of fire ahead of time. And he said to me, leave him alone. I said, what? Leave him alone? He said, leave him alone. He said to me, I have drawn a line between you and him with my blood. He will never cross the blood. He will never touch your life. My blood is a bloodline. I have drawn line between you and him with my own blood. He will never cross the line of my blood. He will never touch your life. And you and I, in these last days, must live a life within the line of the blood of Jesus Christ. If you break the hedge, you open the door for the enemy to attack you. The bloodline is our defensive line. It's our line of protection. And God wants you and I, even the youngest Christians, all in this end time, to stay within the bloodline. Don't break the hedge. Stay within the wall of divine protection. The Israelites here, they all had to stay inside the room with the door post all sprinkled with the blood of the Lamb. And as long as they were within that very hedge of protection, God guaranteed their protection that no evil would touch them. As long as they were within that wall, that very house, that very room where the blood was sprinkled, God was a guarantee. Now, if they venture outside the room or the house where the blood was, outside the blood mark, God was not giving them no guarantees to protection. So in this end time, we must make sure that we stay within the guaranteed, divine guaranteed protection, within the blood protection and covering. Let's not break the hedge. Let's be wise and stay within the protection of the blood of the Lamb. Make sure your sins are quickly repented of. If you do something wrong, if you sin, if you do something wrong, repent quickly and ask the Lord to cleanse you immediately with his blood and get back into the blood covering. The devil will try to lull you out of the covering, or some part of you become exposed to the enemy. And if you break the hedge, the serpent will sting. So here they had to stay within that very room where the blood was sprinkled. Also, we have a story there in the book of Joshua, chapter 2. We have a story of this harlot of Jericho that is called Rahab. Here, Joshua sent out 2 men to go and spy out Jericho, because they've already crossed the Jordan. They were now in Gilgal, and over there was Jericho, which was a very well fortified city. They have heard all that God did for Israel from Egypt all the way to this time. So the whole city was in alert and preparing themselves against an onslaught of the Jewish nation. So here, Joshua sent out 2 spies to go and spy Jericho. And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, "Go view the land, even Jericho." And they went and came into an harlot's house named Rahab and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, there came men in Tyre tonight of the children of Israel to search out the country." And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, "Bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thy house, for they be come to search out all the country." And the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and said, "Thus they came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were. And it came to pass about the time of the shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whether the men went, I wot not. Pursue after them quickly, for you shall overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them with the stalks of the flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. And the men pursued after them the way to Jordan under the fords, and as soon as they were which pursued after them were gone out, they shut the gate. Before they were let down, she came up unto them upon the roof, and she said unto the men, "I know that the Lord had given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed." Well, anyway, in verse 3 it said, "Now, therefore, I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have shewed you kindness, that you will also shew kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token." Okay, and that you will save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have, and deliver our life from death. And the men answered her, "Our life for yours. If you utter not this our business, it shall be when the Lord had given us the land that we will deal kindly and truly with thee." Then she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. And she said unto them, "Get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourself there 3 days, until the pursuers be returned, and afterward may you go your way." And they said unto her, we will be blameless of this thy oath, which thou hast made us swear. Behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou didst let us down by, and thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household home unto thee. And it shall be that whosoever shall go out of the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be upon his head, and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if any hand be upon them. Wow. So, you want to be safe. Whatever is within your home, this your house, we guarantee their safety. Any one of your family members that stays away or strays away or is not within this very house of yours, whatever happened to them, we don't guarantee that. In these last days, you and I must walk wisely and circumspectly to stay within the covering of the blood of the Lamb. Don't break the hedge. Don't allow the devil and sin and the world and the flesh and your own ego and ambitions to entice you to cross the bloodline. And you live a loose, unprotected Christian life. And then you give the enemy every chance to attack you. In fact, there in Psalm 91, it says these words, which is a psalm of divine protection. Psalm 91. And I hope you read that psalm time after time. Psalm 91 said that he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The secret place of the Most High, we can say here, the Holy of Holies. Before the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, he must carry the blood of slain lamb to pour on the mercy seat. That was the only access anyone could have to come under the shadow of the Almighty God, under the Shekinah glory of God. It is the blood that gives you an access into the place that is so secured in the Holy of Holies. And if you and I are to dwell under the shadow of God's wings, we must know the power that is in the blood of Jesus Christ. In this end time, every one of us must dwell in this secret place, this sacred place of God. The blood of Jesus Christ is the most sacred thing in heaven and on earth for you and I as a human. His blood is the most sacred thing. The blood of the Lord, Jesus Christ, is our covering, it is our protection, it is our shield. We must stay under the covering of this blood. It is a holy blood, it is a pure blood, it's undefiled blood. We must learn to live holy and pure. We must learn to repent of our sins quickly and give no room to the devil, give no foothold to the enemy. Hallelujah. He that dwelleth in the scriptures of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. When we are under the blood of the Lamb, we live daily under the cleansing. The Bible said, if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another. And the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all unrighteousness. Every little spot, every unclean spot must be cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. Wow. And it says in verse 5, thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that was at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side and 10 at thy right hand, but shall not come nigh thee. All this is possible under the mighty blood of Jesus. Time after time, cover yourself and your family and your children and your husband and all you are and all you have with the blood of Jesus. Years ago, I was flying from Atlanta to Amsterdam, And as I was praying in my hotel room, I was about to head to the airport. As I was praying for the flight, for the trip that very day, I fly a lot every particular year. As I was praying in my hotel room there in Atlanta, and I just almost like literally saw, as I was saying, the blood of Jesus, the blood of cover me, the blood of Jesus over me, the blood of, I saw the blood of Jesus. 3 drops, boom, 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 on my head. And I was so energized and strong, and I was ready to fly. The blood of Jesus Christ is for you and I today. It is the blood of sprinkling. It's a living thing. Whenever you call on the blood, it is a living thing. It flows down. It's a living thing. It is more real than the air you breathe. And even right now, I call on the blood of Jesus Christ over you who is watching. Let the blood of Christ cover you and break every spell of fear. In Jesus' name. In his blood we have redemption. In his blood we have cleansing. In his blood we have protection. His blood is our shield and defense from the arrows of darkness, from witches and wizards, from the occult powers, from the onslaughts of Satan in these last days. The blood of the Lord Jesus Christ is our hedge of protection. The blood is for you today. If you're not yet giving your life to Christ, you are naked, you are exposed. Come on, right now, prayer. Oh Lord Jesus Christ, forgive my sins and save my soul. I believe you are the Son of God. I give you my heart. I give you my life. Come into my heart, Lord Jesus, and be my Lord and my Savior. I submit myself to your power and authority. Lord, hide me, cover me, forgive me and cleanse me, and hide me with your blood. The blood of Jesus Christ is for you today. The Lord Jesus said, I desire that you be under my wings as the hen hide the chicken under its wing. Come under the covenant of the blood of Jesus Christ today and be safe and secure. Again, I challenge you, support the work that you are hearing. Let's do it together. Call right today. The way to help us online, to stay online, is right there in the screen. And the Lord bless and keep you under the mighty covering of the blood of Jesus Christ and keep you from every harm in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen.